Did Abraham Lincoln actually order a hit on Confederate President Jefferson Davis? I know, it sounds exactly like a Hollywood thriller, but believe it or not, this is one of the most explosive and fiercely debated questions in American history. Welcome to Our Explainer. I am absolutely fascinated by the bizarre, tangled web of events we're looking at today, mainly because the whole thing started with just one single piece of paper. The words written on it were chilling. Once in the city, it must be destroyed. And Jeff Davis and cabinet killed. That shocking directive was actually found on the body of a dead Union colonel back in March of 1864. And, as we're about to see, the discovery of those specific words set off an unstoppable chain reaction of espionage, violent retaliation, and the rise of secret societies. Okay, let's dive into this. We're exploring the shadows of the Civil War, espionage, retaliation, and the domino effect. We're going to trace exactly how one botched cavalry raid triggered a brutal shadow war, culminating a year later with a man named John Wilkes Booth. Part 1. The Spark, the Dahlgren Affair. To really understand what sparked all this, we have to put ourselves in the grim winter of 1863 to 1864. The situation was dire. Around 1,500 Union prisoners were dying every single month in dangerously overcrowded Confederate camps like Belle Isle. Just let that number sink in. These camps were overflowing, largely because the Confederacy absolutely refused to exchange captured Black Union soldiers. So, desperate to stop this massive loss of life, a wildly daring cavalry raid on Richmond was given the green light. The plan was a two-pronged attack led by Brigadier General Hugh Judson Kilpatrick and Colonel Ulrich Dahlgren. But man, it was a complete and utter disaster from the start. They rode out on February 28th, but sleet, freezing rain, and Confederate guards basically stopped them in their tracks. Separated and trying to retreat, Dahlgren was ambushed by Virginia cavalry on March 3rd and killed. By March 4th, the whole operation was totally crushed. But the failure of the raid? That actually wasn't the real story. What happened next is where it gets crazy. A 13-year-old boy named William Littlepage was wandering through the aftermath of the ambush, essentially searching Dahlgren's body for valuables. But instead of finding a pocket watch or some coins, he stumbled upon a packet of papers. He handed them straight over to his teacher, and those papers? They quickly made their way up to the absolute highest levels of the Confederate command. These were the assassination orders we talked about earlier. But were they actually real? Well, the historical debate here is incredibly fierce. On one hand, the Union Army, Northern newspapers, and even Dahlgren's own father furiously claimed the papers were just a crude Confederate forgery. On the other hand, the Confederacy was absolutely outraged, treating them as undeniable proof of Lincoln's cruelty. Fascinatingly enough, modern handwriting analysis by the Smithsonian Channel suggests the documents were indeed authentic, with some experts pointing the finger at Union Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, not Lincoln, as the likely mastermind behind them. Part 2. The Retaliation. Unleashing Total War. Honestly, regardless of who actually wrote those orders, the damage was completely done. The sheer fury over the papers, which was definitely compounded by an angry Richmond mob desecrating Dahlgren's corpse, even going so far as displaying his wooden leg in a store window, directly led Jefferson Davis to authorize a chilling new strategy. He unleashed total war behind Union lines. And to execute this, the Confederacy turned to Thomas Hines. Now, Hines was a slender, totally benign-looking former grammar instructor turned cavalryman, but do not let his looks fool you. He was the brilliant mastermind tapped to lead the Northwest Conspiracy, tasked with burning northern cities and sparking full-blown regime change uprisings. His real-world espionage feats literally rival any spy fiction you've ever read. The guy's resume is insane. He famously escaped the Ohio Penitentiary by digging a secret tunnel, a trick he actually had copied straight from reading the novel Les Miserables. From a hidden base up in Canada, he plotted to free prisoners from Camp Douglas. During a search by Union soldiers, he once hid inside a mattress while a sick, delirious woman laid right on top of it so the soldiers wouldn't check. Oh, and he once escaped Detroit by holding a ferry captain at gunpoint. I mean, he was the real deal. Let's move to part 3 and see how this builds. The Shadow Networks. Knights of the Golden Circle. You see, Hines wasn't operating in a vacuum. The whole era was just rife with massive secret societies plotting expansion, and Confederate spies regularly collaborated with them. Founded back in 1854 by George W. L. Bickley, the Knights of the Golden Circle had this grandiose, deeply unsettling vision. They proposed carving out a massive empire with a 16-degree radius, that's roughly 2,400 miles, centered perfectly on Havana, Cuba. The whole goal was to secure territories with climates suited for plantation agriculture, essentially to ensure the permanent continuance and expansion of slavery. Their goals honestly read like a comic book villain's manifesto. They literally wanted to violently annex 25 new slave states in Mexico. They planned to seize Central America and the Caribbean through armed invasions. Just wild stuff. But when the Civil War actually broke out, this imperialist society shifted its focus inward. They morphed into a covert network supporting Southern secession and aiding Northern anti-war Democrats, who were known as Copperheads. This fed right into a nationwide culture of intense paranoia and grand conspiracies. Part 4. The Climax. Real Spies versus Pretenders. So this deep culture of secret societies, combining with the very real espionage of men like Thomas Hines, ultimately intersected with the tragic assassination of Abraham Lincoln. When John Wilkes Booth's rented room at the National Hotel was searched after the assassination, investigators found a piece of paper labeled Exhibit 7. It was a handwritten cipher. And during the trial of the conspirators, prosecutors aggressively used this exact piece of paper as ironclad physical evidence to link Booth directly to the Confederate Secret Service. But we really need to demystify this so-called ironclad evidence. The document they found was just a Vigenère table. Now, while it's true the Confederacy did use this method, it was absolutely not some highly guarded Confederate state secret. In fact, the Vigenère cipher was invented way back in the 1500s. By the time of the Civil War, it was so widely known that everyday newspapers were actually publishing instructions on how school children could use it to write secret messages to their friends. And this brilliantly illustrates why having just the table means absolutely nothing. To actually use it, you have to choose a secret keyword. Let's say Lincoln. You write that word repeatedly above your secret message. Then, you use the Vigenère table to intersect the row of the message letter with the column of the keyword letter. Without that specific agreed-upon keyword, the table itself is just a common translation tool. It's completely useless for breaking a real code. So the absolutely crucial point here is the massive contrast between real spies and pretenders. Real Confederate operatives used highly guarded official key phrases like "come retribution" to encode their operations. Then you have Booth. Investigators never found any official keywords or coded messages in his belongings. None. Instead, historical records show Booth just used the cipher to brag to his sister Asia, basically trying to impress her. It was complete amateur hour. Booth was a delusional actor just playing the part of a secret agent. Part 5. The Domino Effect, complete. So the domino effect is complete. The botched Dahlgren raid in 1864, with its shocking assassination orders, sparked real, highly organized Confederate retaliation. That shadow war fueled a toxic culture of paranoia and secret societies, which ultimately intoxicated and inspired a desperate, tragic amateur named John Wilkes Booth. Which leaves us with a final provocative thought to take away from this explainer. When we look at historical violence, does the true danger lie in the brilliant masterminds of real conspiracies, or does it lie in the delusional amateurs, desperate to prove they belong in the shadows? Thank you for exploring this fascinating history with me today. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.